You're watching blastaway.eu and this is my M4 replica. Before I talk about the modifications that I did, I want to point out that the goal of this build was not to get as close as possible to the actual firearm, but more like how close can I get with using only Nerf parts or parts from the hardware store instead of using 3D printed parts or airsoft parts. The base blaster is a Stryfe which runs on 3 upgrade batteries and has basic modifications like taking out the locks and the resistance. Something I'm showing for the first time is the minimized trigger, which is really helpful when you want to paint the trigger, especially with semi-automatic blasters where the trigger is connected to the dart pusher mechanism. The paint you apply on the trigger might scratch off more easily. Up next is the magazine quick release, which is basically just an extension using some styrene, and that really helps you to release the mag more flawlessly and really without looking, and yeah, pretty comfortable, I'd say. On top is the scope, which is made out of the recon sight, and it's basically the base, the knob and some PVC pipe glued in between it. Instead of putting the scope onto the tag rail, I glued it onto the jam door, which can still be opened. And the reason for that is that it just looks more close to the actual setup of the M4. Here in the back, that's basically a radar stock, and what I did was I cut out 2 sheets of styrene and glued them onto both sides, trying to replicate this typical look of a M4 stock. Now moving on to the front. The barrel I took apart and just replaced the inner barrel with a PVC pipe, which is actually a little bit wider in diameter compared to the stock barrel, and I used another bigger barrel and put it on top just to replicate a suppressor or silencer. The front iron sight is basically just the tubing of a retaliator stock, which a lot of people don't like, and it's perfect to use it for an application like this. So what's left is the angled foregrip, and if you couldn't tell, it's basically just a recon stock which I cut right at this spot and glued it underneath the retaliator barrel. The front part is still detachable, and what I did and also really recommend is to put little sheets of styrene or plastic right at these 2 spots, which connect to the shell of the Stryfe, so when it's put on it doesn't wobble anymore. For the paint job is just a black base coat and some silver dry brushing. While in order to make it more realistic, when you do dry brushing you should always concentrate on the edges and corners of the blaster. Now showing you some firing. So I don't know if you noticed the difference. This build has a engine brake modification, which means that whenever you let go of the rev trigger, the motors will just stop revving. So 2 things you need to do to perform this modification. Number 1 being exchanging the rev switch for the jam door switch, and this is why. And number 2 is to solder the upper top wire to the negative lead of the battery tray. If you need more information about this modification, I will link Nerf 2Me2's tutorial in the description box below. So that's about it for my first replica. It was tons of fun to make this blaster because in fact it's way easier and less time consuming than my usual projects. For example, this one, it took me several weeks to figure out how to put those 2 parts together, and also playing around with new ideas. While this M4 only took me 2 days, and in fact if I didn't have to wait for the paint to dry, maybe I could have done it in just 1 day. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed the overview, and I'll see you in the next video.